Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India NewsHour, India's voice to the world. I'm Munmun Bhattacharya. Coming up in the next hour. 17th edition of BRICS Summit kicks off in Rio de Janeiro. Addressing the plenary session, PM Modi calls for reforms in voting rights. Governance and leadership also emphasizes on a multipolar, inclusive world order. Israel sends a team to Qatar for Gaza hostage and ceasefire negotiations, but rejects Hamas demands to change ceasefire proposal. Netanyahu to meet US President Donald Trump in Washington on Monday. Billionaire Elon Musk launches a new political party in the US, calls it America Party, says America needs fresh leadership. Texas floods leave at least 59 dead, 27 girls missing as rescuers search the devastated landscape. The 17th edition of the BRICS Summit has kicked off in Rio de Janeiro to enhance cooperation among the member countries. Prime Minister Narendra Modi shook hands and shared a hug with Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva as he arrived for the 17th BRICS Summit. The summit will take up issues of global governance reforms, climate change challenges and artificial intelligence, among other things. It wants to form a framework to collaborate on expanding cooperation in areas of health, ethical use of artificial intelligence to solve global problems, reform multilateral banks to meet the financial needs of meeting the challenge of climate change, and also wants to foster a balanced and inclusive global governance. Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva opened the plenary session on peace and security and reform of global governance at the 17th BRICS Summit in Rio de Janeiro on the 6th of July. The session, part of the BRICS Summit, focused on key global issues including multilateral reforms, peace and security, and strengthening global governance to amplify the voice of the global South. The Brazilian president rejected the Pahalgam terror attack during his address, stating that he rejects the ideology of hate. Prime Minister Narendra Modi at the 17th BRICS Summit in Brazil thanked President Lula for the impactful leadership, calling it a double espresso shot of energy. He congratulated Indonesia's President Prabowo for joining BRICS. PM Modi highlighted how the global South faces double standards in development, resources and security, receiving only token gestures on issues like climate finance and technology. He stressed that 20th century global institutions lack representation and are ineffective, like a phone with a SIM but no network. Calling for real reforms in voting rights, governance and leadership, he emphasized building a multipolar, inclusive world order. Praising BRICS expansion, he urged similar reforms in the UN, WTO and development banks. India remains committed to global welfare. So let's now see what is BRICS. So BRICS is an intergovernmental organization comprising 11 full members. The objectives of BRICS include strengthening economic, political and social cooperation among its members, as well as increasing the influence of global South countries in international governance. Let's try to understand BRICS. So BRICS brings together 11 major emerging economies of the world. It represents around 49.5%, that's close to half of the world's population. It represents around 40% of global GDP and around 26% of global trade. BRICS is an acronym for Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa. The first few members were Brazil, Russia, India and China, and South Africa got added later. Currently, of course, BRICS has 11 countries as far as full membership is concerned. The 5 original members were Brazil, China, India and Russia, and South Africa got added in 2009-2010. 6 new members were admitted into 2024 and 2025. And the 6 new members are Egypt, Ethiopia, Indonesia, Iran, Saudi Arabia and the UAE. The first BRIC summit, it was BRIC then and not BRICS, was held in Yekaterinburg, Russia in 2009. What is BRICS? These are the partner countries, Belarus, Bolivia and others. There's Nigeria, there's Thailand, Uganda and Uzbekistan. There are Belarus, Bolivia, Kazakhstan, Cuba and Malaysia as well. So there are partner countries and there are full member countries. There is also representation from regional and multilateral institutions. And BRICS in fact serves as a political and diplomatic coordination forum for countries from the global south and for coordination in the most diverse areas. Brazil assumed the BRICS chairship on the 1st of January 2025. The theme of Brazil's BRICS chairship is strengthening global South cooperation for more inclusive and sustainable governance. That's the theme of the 17th BRICS Summit, focus on inclusive and sustainable governance and global South cooperation. The focus of Brazil's presidency is global South cooperation and BRICS partnerships for social, economic and environmental development. Flagship priorities of Brazilian chairship include global health cooperation, trade, investment and finance, climate change, and also artificial intelligence governance. In fact, for the first time, a global declaration on artificial intelligence is expected at the summit, and it's also to promote a global reform of multilateral peace and security architecture. A priority is also institutional development. 17th BRICS Summit is underway at Rio. India's role is under the spotlight, from counter-terrorism to trade, with India playing a pivotal role in BRICS and bilateral ties with Brazil gaining steady momentum. DD India spoke exclusively to the ambassador Dinesh Bhatia. He is India's ambassador to Brazil, to discuss New Delhi's key priorities, the state of India-Brazil relations and what's at stake at this year's BRICS Summit, which is currently underway.
Joined in by Ambassador Dinesh Bhatia, who is the ambassador of India to Brazil. Thank you so much, sir, for talking to DD India. Sir, we would want to first ask you about the BRICS Summit. What are India's priorities in this summit, and what can be expected that India is going to push for in this summit?
As far as BRICS Summit is concerned, Prime Minister has participated in all the summits, and our basic agenda since the inception of BRICS has been global governance reform, and we will continue with the same agenda in this summit. Brazil is of course the partner in Global South. It's a strategic partner of India, and we have a common agenda of global governance reforms.
India has put its very strong stance on counter-terrorism, and after the Pahalgam attack, how do you think India is going to push even stronger this time, or probably make a stronger consensus amidst the member states?
Counter-terrorism is one of our core agenda. As far as BRICS is concerned, they will talk about it in some form which I'm not privy to at this point of time. But on bilateral front, I can tell you that between India and Brazil, Brazil has supported us on this issue. And in this visit, we are trying to conclude an MOU on counter-terrorism, which will be another step forward between the two strategic partners.
So, obviously, we'll shift focus to the bilateral that is going to happen between India and Brazil. How do you think, where is the trajectory of the relationship between both the leaders, Prime Minister Modi and President Lula, considering this is Prime Minister Modi's 4th visit this time?
Brazil and India have always been close countries. They have been part of Global South. And since 2006, our bilateral relations were elevated to strategic partnership. And of course, there have been several exchange of visits. Prime Minister Modi's first visit out of Indian subcontinent was to Brazil in July of 2014. That shows the closeness of importance and the closeness of relationship between India and Brazil. And the agenda in the meanwhile has amplified so much. It has deepened and broadened between the two countries. From political relationship, where we are close partners in various fora, we are talking about trade and investment. The trade between the two countries has gone up to more than $12 billion with a slight trade surplus in favor of India. Then we are also talking about from agricultural research to scientific research to digital partnership, which is a very important agenda currently between India and Brazil.
Thank you so much, Ambassador, for speaking to us. So here, as global attention shifts to Brazil with Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to the BRICS Summit, as well as for this landmark bilateral that is going to happen between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Lula, we'll bring to you all the important updates, insights and exclusives from Brazil only for DD India.
An important business gathering is taking shape under the BRICS umbrella with a high-profile Indian business delegation in Brazil. From agribusiness to gems and jewelry to startups, the Indian delegation is scouting for new sectors ripe for collaboration. DD India speaks to the delegation in Rio about their expectations from the summit and the bilateral between India and Brazil that happens after the summit.
By all business people from India. Ma'am, thank you so much for talking to us, and we already have a delegation. What are the expectations? What are we talking about? What is the brainstorming that's going on?
It's really heartening to see that for the Brazilian business delegation and who we've been interacting with, and of course the government officials here are really interested in promoting Brazilian startups. So I think there's a great synergy between Indian startups, Indian investors, legacy companies here and investors and the governments wanting to work on innovation, startups and growing the whole startup ecosystem.
We're also, obviously, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be holding a bilateral with President Lula. What are the expectations of the Indian businessmen that you are expecting that will be one of the outcomes from the meeting?
We see a lot of opportunity because I see some diverse angles also here. Here the natural resources are in plenty. There is a scope for innovation is very high. What attracted me here is how do they use the biofuels? Yeah, they are the leaders in that.
Tariff is 100% there. That once it is reduced, certainly there is a lot of scope between two countries and both will be winner. Only is that CBO, complete build-up unit, should be allowed to basically export here at a slightly cheaper rate.
Economically speaking, what are the expectations from the BRICS?
BRICS is doing a great job by getting people united out here and making people understand what are the opportunities in India, Brazil, what bilateral trade we guys can do together.
We want the primacy of the Indian business. His visit will spur that and will actually give a big fillip and encouragement to all of us to do more.
Our correspondent Meghna Dev is joining us from Rio de Janeiro. Meghna, in Prime Minister Narendra Modi's address, he spoke about how the Global South is at the receiving end of double standards and token gestures. And he spoke about how this applies to climate finance, to sustainable development, to technology access, to distribution of resources or security-related issues. Is patience now running thin among all the Global South countries, all represented there in BRICS? And do you think that the continuing focus on this issue for the need for representation of Global South is going to get momentum with such a vociferous shaming really of the Western-dominated architecture?
Well, Munmun, absolutely yes. When you actually see the intervention by President Lula and the statement that he has made, he has clearly spoken in very strong words about how there needs to be transformation of the UN, how the countries are going to war without even there has been no talk with the UNSC. There's been invasion of territories. Everything's just happening under the gaze of the UN, but the UN is not able to do anything about it clearly. So this is something that we can make out of the statement that he has made. And what we also do see clearly, talking about token gestures, obviously Prime Minister Narendra Modi also spoke about how there's been no representation from the global south on the issues that are being discussed about the global south. Now, while having said that, President Lula also said that not everything about the UN has been in a sense that it has not been able to do anything. Obviously, the kind of role that that the UN had played in the ban of the use of biological and chemical weapons is an example of what commitment to actual multilateralism can achieve. And obviously, it did play a central role in the decolonization process. But to now make it more legitimate, it clearly, make the UN more legitimate, representative, and effective, democratic. It is important to include new members, new permanent members from Asia, Latin America, Africa, and the Caribbean. So this is more in what you also said is this is more in the matter of justice. This is also the way how UN can ensure its survival. So very clearly, in very strong words, he did say that when we, for UN to survive, it is now important to include permanent members. And Munmun, as you asked, it is exactly this is what has been voiced out of his intervention, that now it clearly shows that the global south is not going to be that patient with its representation, in the decision-making processes, be it important aspects of climate financing, be it in developmental initiatives, be it other initiatives of growth and development. What President Lula also said, that it is easier to invest in war than to invest in developmental cooperation, development, and growth. So clearly, he's been saying, he's been voicing what the global south priorities are when we are talking about technological advancements and many things for that matter. So what are the concerns? The concerns are equitable, just, balanced, and democratic multipolar world order. So now what are the challenges? The challenges, obviously, deepening geopolitical tensions, strategic competition, we can say economic downturns as well, besides also technological challenges and migratory crisis. So these are the challenges, obviously, that the global south is facing, but it also it is important to have this multipolar world order in terms to ensure that there is a democratic and balanced global order. So obviously, having said all of it, the ongoing conflicts, President Lula also highlighted the ongoing conflicts, where he clearly said, what we can make out, he's been talking about the polarized and fragmented world order because of the ongoing conflicts, the kind of investments that are going into military, the kind of spending that is happening for military. That clearly shows that it's not that there are no funds, but it's that the funds are being allocated for military and arms and ammunition, but not for developmental initiatives. So this is something that clearly has been voiced out, and it now shows that the global south is not going to keep that much patience. It's going to voice out in very clear and strong words that it demands this the space in global decision making on international multilateral fora, and demands as much presence and as much participation on fora, because we are talking about 2/3 of the global population. We are talking about a huge GDP. We are talking about a huge economy and trade. So global south is something that clearly cannot be ignored. But having said that, today's intervention clearly has set the tone and will be very evident in this time's outcomes for the leaders' declaration that will come out from Rio de Janeiro. Clearly, this is going to be something very essential, very important. And it is going. People are going to look out for the outcomes that will come.
Yes, so coming on that, we know that President Lula of Brazil, the chair of the 17th BRICS Summit, did speak on the issue of terrorism, and he condemned the attacks in Kashmir, which is the Pahalgam terror attack. So can we expect not just counter-terrorism to be mentioned in the joint declaration, but also a condemnation of the Pahalgam terror attack, where innocent civilians were targeted on the basis of religion, and also cross-border terrorism?
So, well, clearly, as I was speaking to you earlier also, Munmun, that the foreign affairs meeting of the BRICS did also, the chair summary also included the condemnation on the Pahalgam terror attack, clearly talking about safe havens, talking about combating terrorism, talking about how it is important to reject double standards of double standards in combating terrorism. So there has to be clear objective when we are talking about combating terrorism. We are talking about stopping terror financing. We are talking about how these safe havens have to be traced, tracked, and action taken against them. We are also talking about how these UN proscribed terrorists cannot roam freely. The action has also to be taken against them. So this is all what the BRICS ministers, the BRICS for that matter, has been talking about. And clearly today, President Lula said the ideology of hate cannot be associated with any religion or nationality. And Brazil also talked about how absolutely nothing justifies terrorist actions. So clearly, this is something that India has been very strongly putting out, across the globe when this Pahalgam terror attack happened, that now the reaction is going to be stronger to any terrorist attack that takes place. Second, there has to be a strong, counter-terrorism, we can say a consensus across the globe for, such terrorist actions. There has to be more crackdown on terror financing. There needs to be action against people who transport terrorism across borders. So clearly, India has been voicing out this when we saw a number of delegations going across different countries and putting out a very strong message that India, in the action that India has taken against terrorism. And I believe after the kind of chair summary that we saw during the foreign ministers meeting, and the kind of, clear mention that the chair of the BRICS did about the attacks in Kashmir, very clearly this is going to be something that will have a clear mention in the in the declaration, the leaders' declaration, the outcome of the BRICS. And definitely this is not only after the Kashmir attack, but we have been seeing, now this is Prime Minister Narendra Modi's 12th BRICS that he is attending. So he has been attending a number of summits, and we know that time and again Prime Minister Narendra Modi, on not only for the BRICS but also on multilateral forum, has spoken about cross-border terrorism, has spoken about importance of taking action against terror financing and combating terrorism. So this is something which will have an importance on today's on the outcome of the BRICS summit.
We'll leave it at that. Meghna Dev reporting from Rio de Janeiro on the 17th BRICS Summit. Time for us to take a breather. Coming up after that, we will have an expert take on the significance of the 17th edition of the BRICS Summit, issues that have been taken up so far, and India's expectations from the summit. Welcome back. You're watching DD India NewsHour with me, Munnan Bhattacharya. And as you know, the 17th BRICS Summit is underway currently in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. And in the opening plenary, Prime Minister Narendra Modi did speak, and he made a passionate case for the need for reform of global institutions such as the United Nations and others. And other than that, President Lula had made his inaugural address as the chair of the 17th BRICS Summit, where he had not just raised the issue of the need for importance of reform of global governance institutions, but also he pointed to the challenge faced by humanity by terrorism, and he also did mention the terror attack in Kashmir. He mentioned it and he condemned it. So let's get now more analysis from Professor Gulshan Sachdev. He is with the School of International Studies in JNU. Professor Sachdev, it's a pleasure to have you on DD India. You know, let's begin with the Prime Minister's address, and like I've been talking to my reporter as well, the Prime Minister spoke about how the Global South has been at the receiving end of just token gestures and double standards on the issue of climate finance, technology, sustainable development, access to resources, so on and so forth. And he also did mention that if BRICS can do it, if G20 can do it, the reform that is of having more representation of Global South countries, then why can the UNSC, the WTO and multilateral development banks not do it? What do you think is the way forward?
Well, I think the way forward is asserting, and way forward is just keep reminding the world that, you know, what we really need is reforms in the institutions of the global governance. And the core of this reform is really the reform of the UNSC. And I think this has been the very clear message one here in this, particularly the initial plenary session, where President Lula and our Prime Minister and many others, I think, are going to speak in the similar language. Two things. One is that the Global South is asserting, and we do need reforms in all these global institutions of global governance. But I think, you know, what BRICS must also do, and I think they would be talking about this as well, it's not just only saying and asserting at the summit, but also bring out certain deliverables with different kind of norms, like they came out earlier in 2014 in Brazil itself with the new development bank. Even if, in fact, you know, numbers may be small, what they're doing, but the norms, the way I think the institutions are governed, where even not, I mean, the votes within the new development banks are not on the basis of how much money you have actually contributed. Everybody has an equal share. So it means there are different kind of norms of governance of all the institutions of the global governance. This is what I think the BRICS stand. But you know what is very, very important today, when we are seeing very clearly that institutions of the global governance is not really working. You look at WTO, you look at UNSC, you look at even WHO and many others, and even climate discussions and talk, particularly when the US is out, is also not really working in the way we would like to see. And the climate finance, the kind of money which is really required. And the Brazil, of course, would be raising that issue very, very clearly because they are going to have COP30 there. So you need at least $1.3 trillion of money for climate finance. So the global South, in that sense, is asserting, and the reform is really the key. But I think, as I said, the BRICS itself also has to come out with something new to really show the world that things can be done differently.
Okay. Quoting President Lula, he said the ideology of hate cannot be associated with any religion or nationality. Brazil condemns the attacks in Kashmir. So this is what he said on Kashmir and on the issue of terrorism. Do you think that this is going to resonate as far as the joint declaration is concerned, or the leaders' declaration is concerned? Will the Pahalgam terror attack be mentioned there? Will all the countries come on board to condemn it? And will the challenge of cross-border terrorism also find mention there?
I think it's highly likely that it would be mentioned, because if the president of Brazil has mentioned in the beginning itself, and India, of course, has been pushing it, But it's also very, very important from the Indian point of view that bringing these issues, and particularly issue of cross-border terrorism, and even particularly mentioning Pahalgam, if we find that in the final declaration, I think this will be quite satisfying from the Indian point of view, because normally, I mean, in BRICS, they do talk about all kind of issues, from trade, investment to climate change to artificial intelligence to health, agriculture, etc. So broad, in fact, issues which are social, economic, political, and also issues of global governance and the reforms of institutions. But normally, in fact, they have shied away earlier talking about security issues, and particularly issues where, in fact, some of the countries, as we have seen, even within the BRICS itself, they might have slight reservations on mentioning particular incidents. But I think that will be quite, important thing if that happens, and I think it's likely to happen now.
Also, further quoting President Lula, Professor, he said that BRICS is the heir to the non-aligned movement. With multilateralism under attack, our autonomy is once again at risk. Hard-won advances like climate and trade regimes are under threat. So, we were all discussing earlier about how whether there would be a leaders' declaration, because the decisions are consensus based, and there is one view that BRICS is seen as an anti-Western group. Another view is that it is not anti-West, that it is just the voice of the global South, and there are countries like India that believe in strategic autonomy, and in the decisions that they take in multilateral fora, that reflects. So, what sort of wording or language do you expect? Would it be really carefully worded? Will there be balancing act in the leaders' declaration? Because here clearly we know where this particular statement is tilted.
Well, language would be very, very carefully worded, because today the BRICS actually, I think, facing two major, I would say, challenges. One is it has expanded, so there are different kind of members. Some members which are quite anti-US and West, particularly look at Iran or Russia. But then you also have members, like UAE, Egypt, India, and other, those who have worked very closely with the United States and other Western countries as well. And President Lula, as a chair of BRICS, I think he'll be very, very careful. In one way, he would like to really assert BRICS as a really very important alternative which can provide alternative governance. At the same time, he also would not like to, to be seen, or BRICS would not like to be seen as a kind of anti-West or anti-US. And particularly when we have President Trump, who has been making many statements about some of the activities of BRICS, particularly when Russians were talking about common currency and some others supported. So I think he'll be very, very careful. This is an act, but you will find many of those issues very, very clearly, because today the global South, I think everybody has realized, is very different. You have, it's not just bunch of you developing countries. Yes, there is a legacy of non-alignment. There is a legacy of what the new international economic order we were talking about in the 70s. But this is something very different world today we are. So the global South countries, look at the countries which are the BRICS or the partner countries. I mean, if you look at, and the countries which are likely to join, or they are willing to, or they have shown their interest in BRICS. I mean, you put them together, they are really huge. I mean, they are economically, strategically, politically, even intellectually, they are really heavyweights. So you can't really now ignore many of them. But of course, there are also certain differences among members. We are very clear. I mean, we know that on certain issues there are challenges between India and China. But I think still, I think all the countries have come together, and they would like to see something very, very different than what. And in fact, our Prime Minister has very clearly, as mentioned, that you can't have 21st century software, through 20th century typewriters or something. So in that sense, the norms and everything, the way things are governed in the world, is simply not suitable for today's world, and global South is really, really asserting. And BRICS, as a kind of a leading voice of the global South, putting together all these countries, they would like to be at the forefront of this, I would say, of change, or the West-centric and the US-centric model is simply not working. And all the look at all the major problems of the world today for the last 15, 20 years.
And he also said in that context, since you are talking about it, that international law has become a dead letter along with peaceful resolution of disputes and how various wars are waged without taking the approval of the UNSC.
Well, that's true. I mean, all the major problems you can see, not just only in the security front. We have seen now more than 3 years now in the Ukraine war, what has happened in Gaza, and I think he also mentioned very clearly about the whole kind of violations which are taking place in Gaza and many, many other places. So it means the UNSC, which obviously is not effective at all, and many other even economic institutions. I mean, look at, yes, they were effective to some extent. You look at earlier the subprime crisis, then you have the Eurozone crisis, then many other crises which happened. But the problem from the global south is that, all these problems, whether you look at economic problems, even security problems, most of them have really originated from the West or, from the North itself, not really from the South. But the impact of that has been really on South. You look at the oil prices, you look at the volatility in the markets, and I think another problem with most of the countries, with the BRICS members of the global south, they are facing, or at least they are feeling, the way West has really weaponized these financial systems. I mean, the SWIFT has been cut off for Russia, and they can do with many other countries as well. So all the countries in the global south, in that sense, they are alarmed. So they are trying to find certain alternatives, but of course, there's still a long way to go. I mean, even if when the Russians are talking about, common currency, and suddenly you can see the reactions from the US and particularly from the President Trump. But at the same time, the reality is that most of the members of BRICS, they are already, making transactions in their local currencies, and particularly if you look at the last expansion of BRICS, which happened, when many of the oil-producing countries, became members. You are Iran, you have UAE, Saudi Arabia, of course, formally has not joined, but, may join at some point, Egypt and many others. So these are the countries which are, and of course, Russia was very much there. So the countries which are really producing energy, and then you also have major countries which are major, consumers of energy. Look at China, many others. And they are already making their transactions in local currencies. We are making payments in some currencies, some local currency, or using some currencies of other BRICS countries. So this is happening to some extent bilaterally. And maybe now the BRICS has to come out for some kind of mechanisms, may not be common currency, but at least for one or two commodities, they can do certain transactions within some kind of BRICS mechanism. I think many of the things are possible. It will take time, but I think, the alternatives have to be there. Then only, BRICS will become much more effective, and others will have to, kind of listen to what BRICS is doing. They are taking notice, but now sometimes they are also threatening what BRICS can do and what BRICS is likely to do, because of geopolitical tensions between China and Russia, or between China and US, and also, all the wars, etc., and with Europe and Russia. So those are other kind of tensions which are also influencing their thinking and talking about BRICS. But BRICS is moving, and the way I think the global geopolitics have moved in the last few years, definitely there is a momentum in BRICS. But BRICS is also going to be very, very careful, because they know things are not easy, because you also have the trade war, you also have many other things are happening, and nobody wants to really make those statements which can suddenly make particular Americans angry about BRICS, etc. So
absolutely. So it will be really well thought out, as all such declarations are, and it's interesting to point out here. It's also important to point out here that India would be the next chair of the BRICS Summit. So in 2026, we will be hosting the BRICS Summit. So of course, a lot of commonalities there as far as concerns of the Global South is concerned. We'll leave it at that. Professor Sachdev, thank you so much for joining us with your perspective.
Thank you.
Well, on to more news now. India's real GDP grew by 6.5% in 2024-25 despite global uncertainties. The country's consumer price index-based inflation hit the lowest since February 2019. More in this report.
India continues to strengthen its position as the world's fastest growing major economy, expanding steadily despite global uncertainties. The Reserve Bank of India projects this robust momentum to continue into 2025-26, underscoring the country's economic resilience and balanced growth across sectors, fueled by solid domestic demand, easing inflation, and rising exports. Real GDP grew by 6.5% in 2024-25, reflecting healthy underlying economic activity after adjusting for inflation. Other projections also remain optimistic, with the United Nations forecasting growth of 6.3% this year and 6.4% next year, while the Confederation of Indian Industry places its estimate between 6.4 and 6.7%. In 2014-15, the GDP at current prices was 106.57 lakh crore rupees. It's expected to rise to over 331.03 lakh crore rupees in 2024-25, nearly tripling in 10 years. Inflation based on the Consumer Price Index stood at 2.82%, the lowest since February 2019. The number of retail investors surged from 4.9 crore in 2019 to 13.2 crore by the end of 2024. Foreign direct investment inflows reached a provisional $81.04 billion in fiscal year 2024-25, marking a 14% rise from the previous year. Foreign exchange reserves hit a record $697.9 billion as of June 20, 2025. The current account balance posted a surplus of $13.5 billion in Q4 of 2024-25 compared to $4.6 billion in the same quarter previous year. Total exports soared to a new high of $824.9 billion in 2024-25, growing 6.01% from $778.1 billion in 2023-24. Key indicators such as record foreign exchange reserves, a manageable current account deficit, and increasing foreign investment reflect growing global trust in India's long-term prospects. Bureau Report, DD India.
India's Minister of Cooperation, Amit Shah, interacted with people associated with cooperative sector at the iconic Amul Dairy in Anand in the western Indian state of Gujarat. He was there on the occasion of completion of 4 years of India's Ministry of Cooperation. In 4 years, the Ministry of Cooperation has taken several initiatives. All these steps are based on the 5P strategy, which stands for people, packs, platform, policy and prosperity. In the last 4 years, since the setting up of the Ministry of Cooperation, 60 new initiatives have been taken for development, promotion and equitable growth of the cooperative sector in India.
मित्रों, हमारे देश में सहकारिता वैदिक काल से चली। पंचायत, चौपाल, समिति, भंडारा, लंगर, साझा चूल्हा, सहभोज, अनेक प्रकार से एक साथ बैठना, सोचना, भोजन करना, काम करना, ये हमारे समाज का संस्कार रहा और उसी संस्कार को आज के ही दिन नरेंद्र मोदी जी ने विधायी स्वरूप देते हुए देश में पहली बार अलग सहकारिता मंत्रालय बनाने का निर्णय हमारे नेता नरेंद्र मोदी ने किया।
The nation pays heartfelt tribute to Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee on his 124th birth anniversary today. As the visionary founder of the Bharatiya Jan Sangh, Dr. Mookerjee was known for his fearless voice and unwavering commitment to nationalist ideals. He laid the ideological foundation for a self-reliant and united India. His tireless dedication to national integration and his ultimate sacrifice continue to inspire generations. Leaders cutting across party lines paid tributes to Dr. Mookerjee at the Central Hall of Samvidhan Sadan. Lok Sabha Speaker Om Birla, BJP's National President and Union Ministers JP Nadda and Ashwini Vaishnav and others offered floral tributes. Prime Minister Narendra Modi also paid heartfelt tributes to Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee. PM Modi posted on X a heartfelt tribute to the immortal son of the nation, Dr. Syama Prasad Mookerjee, on his birth anniversary. He sacrificed his life to protect the honor, dignity and pride of the country. His ideals and principles are invaluable in the construction of a developed and self-reliant India. Still to come on DD India NewsHour. Russia claims to have captured another 2 settlements in East Ukraine. UK to re-establish diplomatic relations with Syria after the country's years-long civil war.
Jharkhand will mesmerize you with majestic nature, rich heritage and colorful culture.
Johar. Johar. It fits perfectly.
Thank you.
Full workout ho gaya.
Ready?
Postcards from Jharkhand on National Geographic.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India NewsHour. Israel sends a delegation to Qatar for talks on a possible Gaza hostage and ceasefire deal, although Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office has said that changes requested by Hamas to a ceasefire proposal were unacceptable. Hamas's demands include withdrawal of Israeli troops from Gaza. Netanyahu is due to meet US President Donald Trump in Washington on Monday, has repeatedly said that Hamas must be disarmed. Hamas, however, has refused to discuss this Israeli demand. This comes after Hamas said that it had responded to a US-backed Gaza ceasefire proposal in a positive spirit, days after Trump said Israel had agreed to the necessary conditions to finalize a 60-day truce. The UK has announced that it was re-establishing diplomatic relations with Syria after the country's years-long civil war, as Foreign Minister David Lammy visited Damascus, pledging $129 million in support. Lammy met Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara. Lammy's visit, the first by a British minister in 14 years, comes days after US President Donald Trump signed an executive order terminating an American sanctions program on Syria, ending its isolation from the international financial system and helping it rebuild after the war.
I'm here really on behalf of the British people who have always stood by the Syrian people with humanitarian aid and support, to speak to this new government, to urge them to continue to be inclusive, to ensure that there's transparency and accountability in the way that they govern, but to stand by the Syrian people and Syria as it makes this peaceful transition over the coming months, and to continue to strengthen bilateral ties between the UK government and the government here in Syria.
Russia said on Sunday it had captured another 2 settlements in East Ukraine, one in the Donetsk region and one in Kharkiv region. Ukraine did not immediately comment on Russia's claims. Moscow has been grinding forward on the front line for over a year, pressing its advantage against overstretched and outmanned Ukrainian troops. On Sunday, Russia said it had captured the village of Pidubne in Donetsk and Sobolivka in Kharkiv. The Russian military accelerated its advances for a 3rd consecutive month in June. In a stunning political move, billionaire Elon Musk has launched a new party in the US, calling it the America Party, to challenge what he describes as the country's one-party system. Announcing it on his platform X, Musk took aim at both Republicans and Democrats, saying America needs fresh leadership. The move comes after Musk openly criticized President Trump's newly signed tax cut and spending bill, warning that soaring deficits could bankrupt the country. Musk has also vowed to fund campaigns to unseat lawmakers who supported the bill. A team of technical experts from the United Kingdom arrived in India's Thiruvananthapuram on Sunday to carry out repairs on a British F-35 fighter jet that has been grounded at the city's international airport since mid-June. The advanced stealth aircraft, part of HMS Prince of Wales Carrier Strike Group, was forced to make an emergency landing on 14th June after encountering adverse weather conditions and low fuel levels while operating approximately 100 nautical miles off the coast of Kerala. The Indian Air Force facilitated the safe landing and provided refueling and logistical assistance. Meanwhile, a spokesperson for the British High Commission expressed appreciation for India's continued support and collaboration. At least 59 people, including 15 children, have died in catastrophic flash floods sweeping through central Texas, and search teams are racing to locate dozens more still missing. Among those unaccounted for are 27 young girls from Camp Mystic, a summer camp nestled in the state's scenic hill country. The disaster was triggered by torrential rains that dumped up to 15 inches of rain over the Guadalupe River. Authorities say the actual death toll could be higher as floodwaters ravaged multiple counties. Eyewitness Tonia Fucci, who was visiting her grandmother, recounted the destruction that followed the deadly floodwaters and said that she is in complete shock seeing such devastation. Ashura, which falls on the 10th day of the first month of Islamic calendar, Muharram, was observed on Sunday. Ashura commemorates the martyrdom of Imam Hussain, the grandson of Prophet Muhammad, who died at the Battle of Karbala in 680 AD. The day is marked with prayers, religious gatherings and mourning processions, honoring the spirit of sacrifice, patience and devotion. Imam Hussein's exemplary life, teachings, fearless fight against injustice and a supreme sacrifice find resonance in every era and continue to inspire generations. Prime Minister Narendra Modi remembered the sacrifice of Hazrat Imam Hussain. Taking to social media X, he said, and I quote, "The sacrifices made by Hazrat Imam Hussain emphasize his commitment to righteousness. He inspires people to uphold truth in the face of adversity." The holy Ashura, marking the martyrdom of Hazrat Imam Hussain ibn Ali, was observed across Bangladesh on Sunday. In Dhaka, members of the Shia community brought out the traditional Tajiyah procession, which began from Imam Bara Hussaini Dalan and passed through key areas before concluding at Dhanmondi. Authorities have imposed restrictions on carrying sharp weapons during the procession for safety. Chief Advisor Professor Muhammad Yunus emphasized peace, justice and unity on the occasion. That's it in this edition of DD India News Hour, but do share your thoughts with us on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. You can scan the QR code on the screen to download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. This is Munmun Bhattacharya from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India News Hour. Namaskar.